The Luka Doncic Anthony Davis trade was one of the worst trades in the history of sports. We already knew that, but somehow it just got even worse. Now, on the one hand, Anthony Davis was awesome in his Mavs debut. We got to see this identity for Dallas that they wanted to move towards. They didn't want Luka on the team anymore. They wanted this defensive identity. Nico Harrison wanted Anthony Davis. He's still a top 10 player in the league. He was fantastic last season. All that stuff makes sense. And AD showed everybody exactly what you're going to get out of him in his debut. He was awesome on the glass. Defensively, he was scoring everywhere. He was hitting threes. He was playmaking. There's just expanded offensive role potentially for AD as he gets later on in his career that kind of changes the way we think about him as a player. And then to cap it off, of course, unfortunately, he gets hurt. But that's part of the Anthony Davis experience. And that's one of the things that we talked about, the people talked about with the Luka trade, was that the Mavs had all these concerns about Luka's conditioning and his long-term health and his defense and all this different stuff. And they traded for a guy in Anthony Davis that, yes, was really healthy last year and was awesome last year, but always seems to have some kind of injury issue. And whether it's because he rushed back from the injury too soon or it was just a complete fluke and a coincidence, that was immediately apparent for Dallas. And now their season is slipping away from them. The point of the Luka trade, or one of the points of the Luka trade for Dallas, was they wanted to try and compete for a title this year, next year, and the year after. They knew in their heart of hearts, even if they want to say what they want to say publicly about his conditioning, how his body's going to wear down, whatever the case may be, they knew that long-term, Luka Doncic was a better asset than Anthony Davis. But they thought in the short term, this year, next year, the year after, they would have a better chance to win an NBA title, not make the finals, not have a decent run in the postseason, but actually win the title with Anthony Davis on the roster. And that assumes that you're going to have a good run towards the end of the season with Anthony Davis on the roster and make the playoffs and have a playoff run. But now they've lost a couple of games. They're dangerously close to not really even being in the playoffs or the play-in. And Anthony Davis is out for an indefinite period of time. This was the concern for the Anthony Davis trade in the first place. Did people go a little bit too far talking about Anthony Davis? Probably. He's still awesome. Top 10 player in the league. Still fantastic, asset moving forward. That's why he got traded for Luka in the first place. But there's a difference between trading for 30-year-old Anthony Davis and trading for 25-year-old Luka. And despite conditioning concerns, whatever the case may be, we have already seen that in Dallas. And truly, I feel bad for Mavs fans for a variety of reasons, but you got a little bit of hope in this game. You got to see exactly why Dallas kind of convinced themselves to make this move in the first place. You could make the argument as you're watching Anthony Davis just destroy the Rockets that they are better this season with Anthony Davis on the roster than they would have been with Luka. Luka wasn't having that great of a start to the year. Then he got hurt. You bring in Anthony Davis to this group that has this defensive identity, and Kyrie as a scorer, Klay Thompson as a spacer, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. You've got all this size. You can play AD at the 4 because that's where he wants to play, and you could see it for 3 quarters. You saw, oh, this is the vision. I get it. Like, yeah, I really still want to have Luka on the team, but I understand what it looks like now to have Anthony Davis, how impactful that'll be, and then that just gets taken away from you. But it isn't just that. It isn't just that the trade was bad, that you traded an icon, that Anthony Davis is now hurt. It's also becoming an organizational embarrassment for the Dallas Mavericks. You've got fans getting kicked out of games and an overtime loss to Sacramento because they said fired Nico on the Jumbotron. You've got a team that is afraid to put fans on the Jumbotron because they know how upset they are. Nico Harrison massively underestimated the negative impact that trading away Luka Doncic was going to have on the fan base. And they've spent the last couple of days, the last week or so since the Luka trade to try and justify it, to try and calm down the fans, show them why they made the move, including the owner of the franchise giving an example of players in the past that have shown great work ethic and shown, a real commitment to being fit and being well conditioned and really took their job seriously. And he goes, okay, Kobe, that makes sense. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. Shaquille O'Neal was listed in this comment. And that tells me everything I need to know about the decision-making in Dallas, about how much this guy actually watches the NBA, about how much he realizes what he even did. I don't think the owner of the Mavs even realized what he was doing when he agreed to trade away Luka Doncic, because Shaq is not the epitome of conditioning. He's a guy that notoriously throughout the history of the league, everybody knows that Shaq could have had a better career if he had taken his body and his conditioning more seriously. And one of the historical parallels for the Luka trade was, it's not exactly one-to-one, but when the Lakers traded away Shaq to the Heat because they were tired about his conditioning, they were tired of dealing with him. Kobe specifically was tired of dealing with him. Then he goes to Miami and immediately wins a title. That's one of the historical comparisons for the Luka trade, yet he's using Shaq as an example of the opposite of Luka. But it's not just that. because we've gotten even more details about how exactly the trade went down, how Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka came to the decision and agreed on a deal that ended up with Luka in LA. And not just Luka in LA, but without the maximum compensation in return for Luka Doncic. And those details are essentially Rob Pelinka convinced Nico Harrison that Luka was not actually as valuable to them, to the Lakers, as we all know that he is. One of the requirements for Nico Harrison in negotiating with Rob Pelinka was he didn't want anybody else to know. He didn't want any of the other teams around the league to know. He wanted him to know, Rob Pelinka to know, and then eventually the owners of the teams. That was it. And in doing so, they did not give the Lakers the opportunity to even speak to Luka before the trade was made. Ask him about how excited he would be to be with the Lakers. Did he want to play with LeBron? Did he want to get traded? Would he be interested in signing an extension before his impending 2026 free agency? The Mavs did not allow the Lakers to do any of that stuff. And as a result, Rob Pelinka goes back to the Lakers and says, well, if you won't let us talk to Luka, if we don't know if he's going to leave in 2026, we could trade for the guy and he could be super duper unhappy. If you're not going to let us do that, then we're not going to give you everything. We're not going to give you Austin Reeves. We're not going to give you a future first round pick. We're not going to give you a pick swap. We'll give you AD, Max Christie in a first, and that's it. We're calling it a day. And Nico Harrison actually looked at that situation and decided, you know what? Even though we're trading away a 25-year-old superstar core of our team, icon of our team, our fans are going to be losing their minds because we trade this guy away. I'm actually okay not getting maximum compensation in exchange so that you can just keep this quiet and nobody else can know. And that tells me everything I need to know about the decision-making process for Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks when it comes to the Luka trade. It was more important to them to keep the deal secret, to not let the fans know, to not let the rest of the NBA know, because he knew how seismic of a decision it would be. It was a bigger deal to him to keep it quiet than it was to actually get maximum compensation. Now, in seeing the reaction of the fans and the league itself, maybe that was the right decision. If he was that committed to trading Luka, we don't know if long-term he'll end up being right. Luka breaks down when he's 28 years old. Who knows? Maybe the Mavs are really good this year or next year and they win the title or they get close and it turns out to be at least kind of defensible. But regardless, we know what the reaction has been since. We know that Mavs fans are getting kicked out of games because they're basically protesting the GM of the team. And part of Nico Harrison had to know that was going to be the reaction, and that's why he wanted to keep it secret. Now, it still makes no sense to me why he wouldn't go to the rest of the league, try and get maximum compensation, other than the fact that Anthony Davis was just his guy. He wanted Anthony Davis on the team. That's the only player that he wanted in exchange for Luka. He went out and got him. And like I said, in his 2.5, 3 quarters as a Dallas Maverick, he was fantastic. But this is the issue and has always been the issue with Anthony Davis. Nobody was questioning at the time of the Luka trade that Anthony Davis was a top 15 player in the league. Nobody was questioning that. They were questioning his long-term health, his long-term viability, alongside someone in Luka that, yes, maybe have issues with his conditioning or complaining with the refs or whatever the case may be, is just 25 years old, which 100 out of 100 times is a better injury bet than someone like Anthony Davis, not to mention the fact that he's probably one of the 3 or 4 best basketball players in the entire world. And now that we have seen Luka in his Lakers debut, it's clear just how much of a disaster this is going to be the rest of the season for the Mavs. You've got AD probably going to be out at least a month. Luka's going to continue to get more comfortable on a Lakers team that, by the way, was playing really well before they traded away Anthony Davis. And now he gets to go to the LeBron school of conditioning, the LeBron school of taking care of your body. Everything that he needs to learn about how to be a great NBA player, how to be one of the greatest players in the history of the league. He just gets to hang out with LeBron every day and learn all of that stuff. I have full confidence that not only are the Lakers going to be pretty good the rest of the way this year, at least offensively. Defensively, they're going to have some problems, but offensively, the team's going to be good. The fans are going to be super excited. It's going to be this real energizing situation in LA. As confident as I am that that's going to happen, I'm as confident that it's going to go the opposite direction in Dallas. There is a real scenario here where the Mavericks don't even make the playoffs. And in a couple of months, Mavs fans are looking around thinking, we were in the finals last year. Now we're not in the playoffs. Luka's gone. We have Anthony Davis on the roster, and we have no idea where our team is going moving forward. And there's also a scenario where 2 to 3 years from now, AD isn't the same guy. Maybe he's not even on the team anymore. And when you would have had 28, 29-year-old in his prime Luka, then you have nothing. As an NBA fan that has been part of some pretty hopeless situations over the years, as a fan of the Nets where we have no picks, no future, nobody that's any good, I would not wish this particular situation that the Mavs fans are going through right now on any fan base in the entire league. It is as gut-wrenching and heartbreaking of a situation as you can possibly go through. And the thing that just makes it so much worse is that the organization chose to make it happen. A player of this caliber getting traded in the middle of the season, getting traded at all without a trade request, just does not happen. The fans at least get a little bit of time to grieve and say, okay, maybe Luka will end up leaving. He's not happy. We didn't do a good enough job building the team. That's normally how it goes. But the organization went out of their way. They made the decision that they didn't want Luka Doncic to be a part of whatever the future of Dallas Mavericks basketball is. And yes, Anthony Davis looked really awesome for 2.5 quarters, but whatever you get out of Anthony Davis, whether it's, making the finals or a title or whatever the case may be, you're getting that for the next 2, maybe 3 years. And it might not be anything this year either, depending on how serious the injury is. And whatever you would have had with Luka was going to be for at least another, 7, 8 years. It was going to be Luka's our guy. He's going to be someone that we're confident we can build around. We're going to sign him to the Supermax in 2026 because it's over $250 million. And you have that at the core of your basketball fandom, and then it gets ripped out. I've never felt as bad for a fan base for basketball related reasons as I do about the Mavs right now.